The zombie apocalypse. Is it coming to a corner near you? We explore the intriguing connection today on Mikhail Messenger. Welcome to Mikhail Messenger. It's great to be with you all. Thank you so much to you who have been praying for me. If you can continue to pray for me as I fight my own zombie apocalypse, so to speak, in my respiratory system, as I try to be restored to you in full. But I'm very excited to be with you today and to share this message I've been working on for the last few days. And it's been amazing the things I've been finding, to the point where I don't want to stop studying it, but I have to share it with you. So I can't resist, and I have to tell you about it. But before I do, be sure to click that subscribe button and click that notification bell so you don't miss any of our notifications. And, of course, like and comment and all that good stuff. And if you haven't yet become a member of our channel, I do encourage you to do that. You can do it just by going to this page, to our channel, clicking join, or you can go to our join channel, which if you can't get there, you just enter youtube.com/Mikhail Messenger / join. You become a member, and you can join us for all of our members only videos, our power hour that we do every week. And during that time, I just focus on you. Whatever you want to talk about, that's what we talk about. It's a lot of fun, and we have a good time during our power hour every week. And when we also have our 24/7 fellowship, where you can come and join us and chat about whatever's on your mind. And we're always there hanging out together, talking about what's happening in the world. So we hope you'll join us for that. This today is really sort of a continuation in a series, sort of based off of 666. So if you haven't watched these other two videos, it's okay. You can watch them after this video but they all sort of fit together, and there's different components. So I encourage you to go back and watch. Just type 666 into our channel, and you'll find these, and you can find these videos there. But very intriguing connections that you'll want to explore there with what I'm going to be sharing with you today. So the zombie apocalypse. Wow. Well, it's not something maybe we talk about too often in the Christian realm, and yet I think you'll see why there might be some connections today. But it's things that tie into the end times and what's happening in our world, and I want to keep you guys abreast of what's going on. In Revelation 9, it says, "In those days shall men seek death and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them." You know, that sounds like kind of an intense thing. How can you seek death and not find it? How can you desire to die and yet it flee from you? Though, from what we're going to look at today, we may find some ways that may be actually possible. You may remember a movie that came out a while back called Escape from New York. And it was based in 1997. Well, we're pretty much there now. I think you know, they used to do those movies in the future, and they realized maybe we got to put it a little bit further in the future. But I think we're about there now, and I think you're going to see that today. But basically, New York City in this movie is a walled-in maximum security prison, and breaking out is impossible. Breaking in is insane. That's what it says right there on the poster. So it kind of ties into what we're going to talk about today as we dive into this. Now, a more recent movie that came out, and I'm not going to promote this movie because it's very violent and crass, but it has an interesting premise that may just tie into what's happening today. As we know, there's what's called predictive of the programming, and sometimes they tell you what they're going to do in these movies before they actually do it in real life. Well, in this particular movie, the villain is offering to everyone a free SIM card that they can put in their phone so that they can have free calls and free internet for everyone forever, for life. Doesn't that sound exciting? And so, of course, people love the idea, and they start to take this man up on the offer. Well, there's kind of a catch. There's a catch here, of course, because he's a villain. He's not out to really help you, just as the current cabal that's taking over the world is not out to help you either. Well, here in this movie, just to kind of tell you what happens here, because it ties into what we're going to be talking about today. It says, during the events of this film, Valentine is his name, intends to change more of the world by having his company give away free SIM cards that can provide free unlimited calls and internet on his network. Much of the world's population are delighted by this offer and accept it, but unknown to them, every single one of the SIM cards can transmit a neurological wave that triggers aggression and switches off inhibitors in a person's brain, which will make that person violent and resort to killing. It later turns out that the entire Valentine Corporation is involved in a plot that will use the SIM cards to engineer a series of mass murders throughout the world that will reduce the human population. Reduce the human population, where we heard that before, and allow Valentine to set down a new world order. Well, where we've heard that before, for the survivors. To test the cards, Valentine and his right hand, and so forth. So basically, they get people to attack and kill one another just by what transmits from their phone to their brain, turning off that that neurotransmitter in us that would normally say, "Oh, I'm not going to kill this person," right? It turns that off, and it gets them aggressive and full of rage until they actually carry it out. And then there's also something given to the leaders at that time. A little chip is implanted in their neck, basically saying, "Look, if you have this in your neck, then those neurotransmitters won't work on you, and you won't try to kill anybody, and they won't try to kill you." But really, he's lying to them as well, like the devil does. He's lying to those people as well, and he's able to explode that chip and kill the person in whom it is in. Well, as we're going to see, this kind of ties into what we're going to be talking about today, and enter Link NYC. Link NYC. Now, this has been in the news just in the last couple days. Link NYC is very similar to Mr. Valentine and his corporation in that movie, in that they are a group that's offering free Wi-Fi, free internet, free phone calls forever, for life, for the world. It doesn't sound great. It just sounds too good to be true, right? You know, whenever it's free, you always got to ask why, because nothing in life is free, right? There's always something they're going to take from you. So what is it? What is it that they're after? Well, they're offering this free Wi-Fi and free internet and free phone calls. You say, "Oh, wow, that's so nice of them," right? While the world is falling and crumbling apart, this is what they're offering in the midst of this. Well, think again, right? This is a way to get you to buy into it. If it's free, if it's great, you're like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to buy into that. Sounds awesome." You're going to support it. You're not going to fight them setting it up. Well, it says here, big tech pays to supersize Link NYC and revive that broken promise to bridge the digital divide, to offer these free Wi-Fi hotspots throughout Manhattan, throughout New York. Okay, now here was an artist rendering back in April of 2022, of this year, and you might think, "Man, look at that thing! It's like ginormous, it's ugly, it's hideous." Surely that was just an idea of what they were going to do. They wouldn't really try to put up a tower like that. I mean, look at that thing. It looks like something out of the Hunger Games or the Running Man or something. I mean, it looks like something you put in a prison planet or something of that nature. Well, it didn't take long, but they installed exactly that tower, and they have been installing them ever since. This is from September. You can see a man installing this here. These 5 of the ginormous Wi-Fi sidewalk tower rises on Avenue A. So they installed this tower. Obviously, it looks hideous and frightening. And what in the world is it? It's huge. It's humongous. It's like 3 stories high. What in the world does it do? Okay, well, they're popping up everywhere, and you probably have heard this in the news recently, but these are going up all over town, but it's free, and they keep advertising that like, "Oh, they're offering free Wi-Fi and free internet for this ginormous monstrosity to be put up on your corner," and neighbors are going, "Hey, what is this? We didn't ask for this. Nobody asked us if we wanted this in our neighborhood. What's this going on?" Imagine being the guy living in that apartment right next door. And they're going up all over the place. Everywhere you look, they're putting them up. Kind of spooky, kind of scary. What are these things? They're super huge. They're super thick. They're super big. What do they do? What kind of radiation? That's the first question that comes to mind. What's coming off of these things if you're living that close to them? And what else is really going on here coming out of these boxes? I mean, check out this picture. You got to see this one. Look at this woman and compare. This gives you a good perspective of how big these things are when you look at her, compared to the size of this thing. Like, wow, man, look at that thing. That is a beast there. I mean, wow. And you're going to have that in every city block? What is going on? And this woman's looking out her window. Oh, so happy to have it looking right in her window there. So here's a map of 5 of the of the ginormous mapper of what's going on all over NYC. This is just of the 5 of the ginormouses. That's all you're seeing here is just those towers, and that's all over NYC. Okay, so the question is, what is this doing to us, right? What is this doing to us? Yes, free internet, free calls. That's how you get it in the door. But what's the catch here? Nothing's free. So what's really going on? Are you zapping our brains? What's going on here? Well, they've been talking about this for years. This is not a new topic, but they're doing it now. Okay, so for a long time they were talking about, we got to fight this, Everybody's like, yeah, because as usual, nobody does anything. And so now here it's happening, right? And so they've been studying for a while how harmful these things are, okay? Here's an example of a man who has a tree in his yard. On one half of the tree is actually growing just fine. Another half of the tree is dying, and right next to that is a tower of this nature. He actually goes on to show that the bark is dying on one side of the tree, but on the other side, the tree is growing, right? And all because of this tower that happens to sit on the opposite side of the tree. There you can see the difference between the bark on one side and the bark on the other, and how it's growing leaves on one side and dying on the other. That's just one example. Here's another picture like that. On one side, you have 970 microwaves per meter squared, I think is what it is. And then the other side is only 130. And you can see the difference between the dying leaves on one side. And there's still some dying leaves on the other side from the 130, but not quite as many there. Here's another video out of Serbia where a woman is sharing how the tower of the Give Me 5 of the ginormous is actually killing the birds. Okay, so here you've got this video. There's the tower, and then she pans over, and you see the birds on the ground, all the dead birds that are lying on the ground. Now, you've probably heard recently about a lot of dead birds dying, bees dying. Okay, so this is not a new thing that's happening, right? This is something that they've been dealing with for a while. And and they kind of just sort of overlook it, but basically it says there's evidence that these systems, that these new devices and technologies associated with the 5 of the ginormous will be harmful to delicate ecosystems. The main component of this network that will affect the Earth's ecosystems is the millimeter waves. Okay, remember that term, millimeter waves, because let me zoom in on this for a little bit for you. It says the millimeter waves that are being used in developing this network have never been used on such a scale before. Okay, so whenever you do something that's never been done before, there's a good chance it's going to be fallout from that. This makes it especially difficult to know how they will impact the environment and certain ecosystems. However, studies have found that there are some harms caused by these new technologies. The millimeter waves specifically have been linked to main disturbances in the ecosystems of birds. In a study by this group, they found out that the radiation from a cell of the tower for just 5 to 30 minutes, the eggs of sparrows were disfigured. Wow. For just 5 to 30 minutes of being exposed to the cell of the tower, the eggs were disfigured. The disfiguration of birds exposed for such a short amount of time to these frequencies is significant, considering that the new network will have a much higher density of base stations throughout areas needing connection. The potential dangers of having so many cells in all over areas where these birds live could cause whole populations of birds to have mutations that threaten their population survival. And now you got a question, of course, if it's doing this to the birds, what is it doing to the people? Additionally, a study in Spain showed breeding, nesting, and roosting was negatively affected by microwave radiation emitted from the towers. Again, the issue of increase of the connection conductors, etc. They also found a connection with bees, okay? The birds and the bees, guys. Did you ever think the birds and the bees would be referring to this? In this study, beehives exposed for just 10 minutes to 900 megahertz waves fell victim to colony collapse disorder. Okay? So people have been talking about this. The birds are dying. The bees are dying. Well, here's your reason. Colony collapse disorder is when many of the bees living in the hive abandon the hive, leaving the queen, the eggs, and the few worker bees. The worker bees exposed to this radiation also had worsened navigational skills, causing them to stop returning to their original hive after about 10 days. Bees are an incredibly important part of the Earth's ecosystem. Around 1/3 of the food produced today is dependent on bees for pollination, etc. Okay, so birds, bees, trees. What about humans? Well, I think we can pretty much guess that that is also part of the deal. Well, isn't it interesting that this network uses the same EMF waves as the penta of the GON crowd control of the system? Right. So it just happens to use the same one, huh? And what's interesting about this is they're going to go well beyond what they used to do. It says, however, it says today's cell of the LUR networks rely on microwaves, a type of electromagnetic radiation. Remember that, electromagnetic radiation, with frequencies of up to 6 gigahertz in order to wirelessly transmit voice or data. However, the new 5 of the GINORMOUS will require unlocking of new spectrum bands in higher frequency ranges above 6 gigahertz up to 100 gigahertz and beyond, utilizing sub-millimeter and millimeter waves to allow ultra-high rates of data to be transmitted in the same amount as time as compared with previous deployments of microwave radiation. Okay, so this is going to be a lot bigger, guys, a lot bigger deal than what we, people are like, oh, what's the big deal? It's just kind of the next thing up, right? It was 4, now it's 5. It's like, no, not that simple. That was 6. Now we're going 100 and beyond. That's huge. That's huge. So we're in experimental territory. Who knows what they're going to do? It says this kind of technology, which is in many of our homes, actually interacts with human skin and eyes. Okay? It says he goes through how human sweat ducts act like a number of helical antennas when exposed to these wavelengths. So what happens, as we're going to see in this video a little bit, is when they shine these wavelengths, or shine it if you want to call it, when they point these wavelengths, it causes burning sensations on the skin for crowd control, okay? And what it does is it actually goes to your sweat ducts. So every little hole, every little pore in your body, that's where it's attacking. So they're basically shining it on these people, if you want to call it shining, pointing it at them and shooting it at them. And it's making them run away in pain. And now they can actually put it onto like vehicles such as tanks and trucks and so forth, and just kind of go throughout a neighborhood and say, hey, how's it going? Just here to fry you a little bit, right? And basically it penetrates currently up to 1/64th of an inch layer, but as we see, we're going beyond this. Okay, check this out. So currently it goes 1/64th of an inch layer of your skin and fries you. Okay. All right, let me keep going here because I got a lot of ground to cover. Okay, so check this out. This gets a lot deeper, guys. All right, so here's a guy in France saying, in the biological destruction, there are the organized tempests on the magnetic fields. What will follow is the contamination of the bloodstreams of mankind. Now, this is interesting. Let me go a little bit further here. Man, let's see what he says here, because I want to share a scripture with you guys too. Creating intentional infections. Okay, yes. So it says it contaminates the bloodstream and then creates intentional infections. Well, there's interesting scripture in Revelation 16. It says, then I heard a loud voice from the temple saying to the 7 angels, go pour out the 7 bowls of God's wrath on the earth. The first angel went and poured out his bowl on the land, and ugly, festering sores. So that's what he says. He says it was a blood infection that causes these sores, these infections on people. That's what we just saw in that video. This is what it says in the Bible. Ugly, festering sores broke out on the people who had the mark of the beast and worshipped its image. The second angel poured out his bowl in the sea, and it turned into blood like that of a dead person, and every living thing in the sea died. The third angel poured out his on the rivers of springs and water, and they became blood. Remember, it said it was a blood infection. So that's kind of interesting tie in there with these sores and the blood. It says, for they have shed the blood of your holy people and your prophets, and you've given them blood to drink as they deserve. And then the fourth angel pours it out, and they were seared by the intense heat. This is kind of interesting because it's intense heat we're talking about that people are being seared with. And then it says here, they cursed God of heaven because of the pains and their sores. So kind of intriguing here. Now, let's keep going with this a little bit more on this video. So it creates intentional infections. Okay, this is the science. This will be enforced via laws that will make poisoning mandatory. Okay, did you catch that? All these poisons will make it possible to control people. Okay, now this was back in 1995. This guy said this, okay? 1995 he's talking about. And by giving them this poison, you'll be able to control people through it. Okay, let's keep going. He says these poisons will have liquid crystals that will become hosted in the brain cells. Okay, so it can pass the blood-brain barrier. Okay. Which will become micro receivers of electromagnetic fields. Remember that word, electromagnetic fields? Micro receivers in your brain, where waves of very, very low frequencies will be sent. So they will send these frequencies, and through these low frequency waves, people will be unable to think. You'll be turned into a zombie. Don't think of this as hypothesis. This has been done. Think of R to the U on da. Okay? So, he literally says you're going to be zombies, okay? So it's not a zombie apocalypse is not just a movie idea, okay? This is something that they've been planning for a long time to control your mind and literally turn you into zombies. So he says, think of the ru to the and to the da. Well, what is he talking about there? Well, this is something that happened, okay? And in R to the wan of the da, there was a liquid crystal zombie slaughter, okay? You may remember, you may have heard stories about R to the wan da, and basically a million people were killed in an epic slaughter of one tribe against another tribe. And it was a special operation, apparently, called the Crim of the Sun of the Mist. Okay? It was an electronic slaughter. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, basically what happened here is there were two tribes, and you can find all this online. There's plenty of articles on it. But basically what they did is the two tribes were trying to find peace, right? So the leaders had gotten together. They were in an airplane. Well, that airplane was shot down, purposely exploded, with both of the leaders from both sides inside the plane. So that what happened was, by killing both of them at the same time, it left both sides without any leadership. And then those from the West who were there kind of influencing all this encouraged them to kind of go after the other people. But initially they were just kind of throwing rocks at each other and kind of mad, the two tribes, because they were supposed to be working things out. But they were kind of mad and throwing rocks and sticks and so forth. Hey, Yeshaya, thanks for subscribing. Appreciate that. Praise God. And so it was just sort of a little sort of, they were angry, but not a lot was happening. Well, apparently this was all planned out, but they took up a plane that had a dish that was able to shoot out these waves that could affect the mind, basically affect those neurotransmitters that could make people be aggressive toward one another, make people enraged toward one another. Now, they were stoked on by some of the people on land saying, basically allowing them to do it, and nobody stood in their way of fighting with one another. But what came out of it, basically, it says that the Hutu crowd went from simple anger to uncontrollable rage. Their eyes glazed, and within minutes, hundreds of assorted Tutsi body parts were flying through the air. So basically, they started out just throwing rocks, but after this C1 to the 30 Herc U of the Lees made a carefully calculated pass over that group, they basically turned them all into fighting malicious zombies that attacked the other side and killed like 1 million people. And it was crazy mind control kind of effort here that was going on. And it's very similar, actually, to what they talk about with us. Now, let me show you something else here on this. Let's see this. Okay, so one of the leading people in this field, this Dr. Elizabeth Rocher Bisse, is a nuclear scientist and researcher. And she said, famously, "Give me the money and 3 months, and I'll be able to affect the behavior of 80% of the people in this town without their knowing it. I will make them happy, or at least they'll think they're happy, or aggressive." So they have the power to do this, and you don't even realize it's being done to you. So you think it's just coming naturally out of yourself, but they're actually changing your mood. They're changing how you feel using these millimeter frequencies on your mind. So it kind of gives you a new perspective on this whole thing with the W to the E to the F, or the world to the echo to the nam of the ik of the for of the and them saying that you will own nothing and you'll be happy. And we're like, oh yeah, I'm not going to be happy about that. It's like, oh yes, you will, because we're going to send millimeter waves into your brain and we will make you happy. And so you'll just accept it and you'll go, oh yeah, this is great. You want my house? Yeah, you can have my house. You want my stuff? You can have my stuff. You want my car? You can have it, right? And you're just going to kind of give it away. And you're going to be so joyful. You're going to be so happy while they just gleefully deceive you and control you and take everything from you and keep you sedated and happy. It's the Soma. It's the modern day Soma of the Brave New World, if you've ever read that book. Kind of similar. Interestingly, her name is Wanda, kind of tying in there. But if you recently saw WandaVision, kind of the same concept she was using of making everybody in the town part of her personal fantasy and making them all happy that they're doing it, when deep down inside, of course, they're not, but they're being mind controlled. Well, this is a real thing that they're capable of doing. A similar situation happened with the museum looting that took place in Bag of the Dad, where basically what they did is they brought everybody in front of the museum and they offered them free food. They said, come get free food. And so everybody gathered there and they were all just kind of there for the free food and having a good time. And then they did the same kind of thing, apparently, is they beamed something on these people. They kind of encouraged them to go inside the museum. And suddenly they became all aggressive and full of rage and just started destroying everything. You know, they went from this peaceful crowd just having some food to suddenly destroying everything. And, you know, and that's what they say in this in the video that you can see, that they changed like on a dime. It's like they're not the same people anymore. And the same thing happened with the Hutu tribe. You know, they were kind of in one state and suddenly they're in a whole nother maniacal state. And they're saying it's part of this millimeter beam wave tactic of controlling people. So basically it works kind of like a flashlight. You know, if you shine a flashlight, how it kind of spreads throughout, that's kind of how the beam works. You could kind of shine it throughout a crowd and it can affect people. And it actually goes in and changes the pattern of the brain waves and turns them into a different pattern. You know, what would be an aggressive pattern, or you can make it into a happy pattern, you know, depending on what kind of result you're trying to get out of the person. Right? Now, there's other weapons that use this same kind of millimeter wave technology. It can do things to blind people. It can burn people. For example, this one can literally vaporize the skin off your body. This says it painfully vaporizes the outer layer of your skin. Rather than burning it, it would be turned into a gas. Wow. Can you imagine that? It's like your whole upper layer of skin is just gone. It just vaporizes it right off your body. So these are weapons they're already using and working on. Next weapon in anti-protest arsenal is the plasma gun capable of vaporizing human flesh. And it reminds me of Zechariah, where it says, "This is the plague with which the Lord will strike all the nations that fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh will rot while they are still standing on their feet. Their eyes will rot in their sockets, and their tongues will rot in their mouths. On that day, people will be stricken by the Lord with great panic. They will seize each other by the hand and attack one another." And, you read that again, and you're like, why do people just randomly start attacking each other? It's the same concept, right? They're changing your mind. They're turning you into an enraged zombie beast. It's not you anymore, right? It's not you living this out. And so here's more information on that laser system that's capable of doing that. They also talk about using sound as a weapon as well, and what they call acoustic weapons. You guys can see this. Different types of weapons that they use to control you with sound. And again, it's already being used. It's already in the military. They already have these things. This isn't science fiction anymore, guys. Hate to break it to you, but Escape from New York, that was made back in the 80s. We're in another time now. We're living in that time. Okay? So here's electromagnetic and informational weapons, the remote manipulation of the human brain. Okay? Here they're actually trying to pass laws to try to limit these land-based, sea-based, or space-based systems using radiation, electromagnetic, psychotronic, sonic, laser, or other energies directed at individual persons or targeted populations for the purpose of information war, mood management, or mind control of such persons or populations. So it already exists. They're trying to pass laws against it. They can even make you fall asleep. If they just want to make you fall asleep using radio waves, they can do that as well. and use these pulsed microwaves to do that. So it has the capability of changing your mood, changing your state of being, all of these things psychologically, and it changes crowd behavior. Here it talks about changing crowd behavior through radio frequency and so forth. So all right, let me keep going here. So recently we had what was called the Havana of the Syndrome, this mysterious illness that was affecting U.S. officials around the world, started in Cuba, but it's happened in other places. Well, one of the things that comes out of this, they complained of feeling nausea and all kinds of feelings. Well, that's one of the things you feel with this. I don't know if it's in this report. I think maybe it's in the next report, but they reported this, a Havana of the syndrome. Okay, so that they're feeling symptoms of nausea and so forth, and that's what those sound waves can do. I think actually it talks about it over here in this article. It says through high intensity sound, severe and long-lasting exposure can cause pain, confusion, disorientation with severe and permanent hearing damage. It can also cause nausea. I remember was one of the things it said here. Let's see where it says that. Nausea, where'd you go? Oh yeah, right there. It says can cause nausea and discomfort while extremely high. So this is like low concentration. So they might not even notice the sound. It's just causing nausea and discomfort, just making people sick, right? So you can take these officials and make them sick, so they're ill, so they're subpar in their abilities to defend themselves and so forth. Okay, there's also what they're calling the schizo beam. Okay, and this can put voices into your head from afar. So there's what they call the puke rays that make you throw up, and then there's also the ones that actually put voices in your mind. And one of the things they said with some of these, for example, in the Muslim situation, is that they would put voices in there saying, Allah says to lay down your weapons, or Allah says not to fight, right? And so they would basically convince them that they're hearing the voice of God in their head, and they would refuse to fight. And they have the ability to beam this into your head, so that you can't literally hear it. Like if you were to record, press record on a device, outside of your head, you wouldn't hear it. But it goes inside into your actual brain that you're hearing it. So that's why you think it's the voice of God, because you're literally hearing it inside your head. It's called the voice of God weapon. So they have the heat ray and they have the voice of God weapon that can literally put God's voice into your head. The Penta of the Gon reports investigated lasers that put voices in your head. And the microwave scream inside your skull. And they've had this technology for a long time. This goes back to 1974, the ability to send these waves inside to your head and transmit them into. So you could think God is telling me to do this, And if you're a religious person, a Christian, Muslim, a Jew, anybody who believes in God, and you feel God is telling you to do something, that's a very powerful weapon that someone could use against you. So you could think you're hearing the voice of God, and actually it's coming from another place. They also have ability to make you, basically to silence you. It's really interesting, by disrupting your own talking. So basically, they could stop you from talking because it'll repeat your own talking back to you inside your own head. So like you talk and then it repeats back to you. So it like confuses you and basically gets you disoriented, and you can't communicate with other people anymore if you're trying to communicate, because you keep hearing your own voice replayed back in your own head. So it really could drive you nuts. And here's some of the more information on that: long-range acoustic devices, sonic weapons, and microwave auditory effect, where it consists of human perception of audible clicks or even speech induced by pulsed or modulated radio frequencies. So they can do that inside your skull. And even if you wanted to not talk and kind of keep silent and keep quiet, well, they can even know if they can even detect you with those millimeter waves coming out of there. They know if you're nearby. So even if you're sleeping in the building next door, they know you're there and can detect your body. Now, if you haven't seen this video yet, this man here says that we've gotten to the point where now we can put the monitoring, the tracing under the skin, right? He specifically talks about that. We're going to put it under your skin. Right, so go look up some videos on this guy here, including this video you can watch. But you'll see where he talks about putting it under the skin. That's what they're doing now. So we've gone past the sort of monitoring people from the outside. The big deal now is to get inside of you. And that's where this comes in, okay? So this brings us back to 5 of the ginormous that's going on right now, okay? And the connection to the graph of the een, okay? The graph of the een. So what is this graph of the een? Well, let's take a look. So this is basically what graph of the een looks like. It's like a hexagon. A hexagon has 6 sides, interestingly enough. And this is what it basically looks like, okay? And there's different forms of it from, you're probably familiar with graphite. You might find that in your pencil. Then we've got oxide. And you have different, it can take different shapes, but it has that hexagon, that honeycomb kind of look to it. And hex literally means 6. I once again, going back to these videos I shared about at the beginning, I talk about that in these. So I encourage you to go back and watch these videos because I talk about that in more detail there. All right, let's keep going here. So, so what they found out interestingly about this graph of the een is it has an ability to be both electronic. As you know, our bodies are electronic. We have electricity going through us, right? Anytime you touch a door handle in the wintertime or something and walk on a carpeted floor or shock your friend, right? It's because we got electricity running through us. We are electrical. That's why when they revive you, when your heart stops, they put an electrical device on you and shock your heart back into happening because you are electrical, right? So they figured out that what's an interesting property of this graph of the een is that it can work both electrically and biologically, right? It's an interface essentially between the biological, i.e. us, human beings, and, organic, and then interfacing with the electronic world as well, as we'll see here. So here's talking about radio frequency technology and the connection there. And then here we get into the bio of the medical applications of the graph of the een, of the ox of the ide. Okay, a carrier for farm of the suit, if the culls, and a scaffold for the cell inter of the actions, right? Hopefully you can read that on the page. I have to talk funny. I hope you understand why. So basically, but that is why this is so important, why it's so such a connection there. Now remember, it connects back to the 5 of the ginormous too, okay? So there's a connection on both sides here that we're seeing, right? It works as a new nano of the carrier for DRUG delivery applications, okay? So remember, it both has a biological and an electrical, electronic connection. Okay, so here's some of the connections for you that you can see on your screen there. Different ways it can be used, okay, that connect both in a biological way and an electrical way. Okay, here's some more interesting ways talking about DRUG delivery and GENE delivery. Did you catch that? Now, if you haven't, make sure you go back and watch those videos once again because I talk about that in here. Be sure to go watch those videos. I'm not just plugging my videos, but they literally connect to exactly what I'm talking about in other ways. So I think you'll see the connection once you will watch it. But anyway, so check that out. Okay, so check out that connection there. All right, let's keep going here. Okay, all right. There's another way of saying it. Look, it can connect with batteries, connect with sensors, with membranes, with DRUG delivery. You see the connection? You see how it's both electronic and biological? You see that connection here? This one's a little bit small, but there you can even have the D to the N to the A to the R to the N to the A, right? We talked about that in the other video. Go check out that video, all right? You're starting to see how this all goes together here, all right? And here we have, and now this is, I think, them promoting why they would use it, right, to kind of cover their back, so to speak, when you're talking about the poison, okay? All right. So then we get back to these ginormous monstrosities that they're putting up on every corner, okay, and the connection there. So now we have the role of these ginormous monstrosities and, surprisingly, the C of the 1-9. Oh, you never would think those would be connected, would you? Well, what's the main reason that they want to connect these two? Tracing. contact of the tracing. Okay, right? So that's what they want to do, so they can track you, right? So, what's the connection? So you're saying that these monstrosities on the corner may involve tracking me? Oh, you bet your bippy. You bet your bippy. Okay. And the other thing is they are magnetic. Okay, magnetics. That's something to keep in mind, because a lot of people reported after getting the poison that they were suddenly magnetic and that things were sticking to them. Here's a woman at a hearing demonstrating how key and other metals stick to her body after receiving the poison. Interesting, magnetic. Well, wouldn't you know that in Spain, scientists found that the graph of the ene, of the ox and the ide nanotechnology in these poisons. They found it in there. All right, so it's proven. It's been proven that it is in there. This is recent. This is from November 9th. Okay, but they found this years ago, guys. Nobody wanted to listen, but they found it a long time ago. They're just finding it again. And a lot of this stuff is old information, but people are more willing to listen when they start to see it come to pass. So here it is. Here it is. Let's keep going here. So what's the next step? Well, as you'll see here, this is the design of wireless nano of the sensor networks for intra of the body application. What does that mean? It's basically a way to connect man and machine. And we know that this is their whole desire, what they call the singularity, that they want to connect man with machine, turn us into cyborgs essentially. Well, how do they do that? They do that by getting this inside of you, right? So that is the whole goal here. Once that's inside of you, then they can literally connect you with the machine. Now, they can already control you in those other ways that we explored from the outside in, but it'll be a lot easier if we can get an intercomponent that is both biological and electrochemical inside of you, right? So that's what they're doing there. We also know that Mr. GATES of hell has his own 666 patent, basically doing the same thing in relation to cryptocurrency, okay, which is the thing they want to institute coming up next month on December 13th. Isn't that nice? Go check out our other video on the end of cash, or the end of the dollar, and you'll see what we're talking about there. So that is also the way they want to do it. They want to interface it with you as a human being, as a person, although really you won't be a human being anymore once they're done with you, but that's the idea. Now, what's also interesting is that in this particular component that they're putting inside of people, that now has been proven, as you just saw, that it is inside of what they're putting in people, is that 666 has been found in it. Now, of course, it already has 6 sides, but it also has 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons. Isn't that interesting? So you got 6, 6, 6. And in addition to that, and again, go watch those other videos that I talk about, because I talk about some of that stuff in more detail. It also, interestingly enough, has a specific capacitance value of 666 farads per gram. So this graph of the ene has specifically a capacitance value of 666. So, and people say, "Oh, come on, it can't be in there." Well, go check your ingredients insert that you received, because as we see in this video, there's nothing on it. It's completely blank. So how do you know? How do you know what's in there? Which brings us back to the zombie apocalypse. What do they really have planned with these ginormous monstrosities that they're putting up everywhere? What is really going on here? Well, it's interesting that on the actual C of the D of the C website, they actually had emergency preparedness and response specifically for a zombie apocalypse. Now, they, of course, claim they were joking with that, but a lot of times they put that stuff out there because they want to, it's part of their code, the satanic code, where they kind of have to tell you up front, but because they think you're so dumb that you're not going to figure it out, that they just kind of put it out there as a joke or in a movie or whatever. And they say, well, we told them, but they're clueless anyway, so they would never get it. But then it kind of absolves them somehow. That's the way they look at it anyway. But they put this out on the actual website and had people going, what's this doing on this website? Funny, I guess, right? If you're ready for a zombie apocalypse, then you're ready for any emergency, right? So they try to kind of make it like a joke, but you're like, what are we really talking about here? I think of all the times recently where they had those people that were supposedly just pumped up on some drug, and they went crazy and started like being cannibals to people. You remember those stories in the news as well? Could that also have a connection to this? You also have these packets here that they were giving out for a zombie defense station and so forth. And, it's kind of funny, but you're kind of like, okay, yeah. Riot shield, shotgun, hacking. Okay, interesting. And in the event of a zombie attack, here's your steps for surviving an infestation that they give out as well. So, where does this leave us, guys? That's the big question, right? What should we be thinking as they're putting this on your street corner, right? This ginormous, hideous pillar that you can only wonder the magnitude of what it can possibly do. Well, to give you a little bit of hope, God does say he has an escape planned for us. And hopefully, it's 7:26 right now, and hopefully that means God's going to jet us out of here before any of this stuff really gets underway. I mean, they're getting everything in place, but hopefully God is going to jettison us out, and we've talked a lot about that in other videos. But one specific encouragement he gives here is in Revelation 12. He says, "The woman was given the 2 wings of a great eagle so that she might fly to the place prepared for her in the wilderness, where she would be taken care of for a time, times, and half a time out of the serpent's reach." So that's what we're hoping in. We're hoping that God is going to protect us and save us from this, or somehow turn this all around from turning it into the maniacal escape from L.A. or escape from New York scenario of the movie, where everyone's trapped there and under the control of others. So in any case, guys, keep looking up. Be encouraged. This is maybe not the most encouraging thing, but we have to be aware of what's going on so that we can stand up against it. We can pray about it. We can do whatever we have to do locally to try to fight it, and ultimately so we can be looking up and looking forward to going back and being at home with our Lord and Savior Jesus the Christ. Guys, it's been great being with you today. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be merciful to you. May the Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. Wishing you all the best, all the blessed, and Maranatha.